Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. And today we have Martin Sher, and he's actually a retired CEO of an 83-year-old family business. And now he calls himself, instead of the CEO, he calls himself the Chief Eating Officer. And he had gained about 50 pounds. He's now lost that weight. He now currently intermittent fasts. He eats in a 2-hour window. And with his vast experience in business, we are going to learn exactly what he did to lose 50 pounds with his own approach. And he wanted to get rid of being on a vicious cycle of diet hell. And he wanted to come on here today and show you exactly what he did for permanent weight loss. So welcome, Martin.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here and finally get to meet you.
Yeah. So I want you to tell people a little bit about what are some of the things that you did to lose that weight. Like, try to be as specific as possible. And I want you to first start by actually talking about what you're doing now, because, what you're doing now is not necessarily, what you did then, but I want you to talk about both.
Sure. Right now, I'm an intermittent faster. I started about 4 years ago. I read a book and I decided to start doing this. I was looking for something to maintain my weight at that point. I'd lost 40 pounds. I ended up losing 50, but I lost the last 10 on intermittent fasting. And I'd done such a good job on myself before that, for the 16 years before I got to intermittent fasting. All I did was went to 20 hours the first day. I just ripped the Band-Aid off. And then I went to 22 hours the next day. And I was hungry as hell both days. And I just stuck at 22 hours from that point on. And I generally eat in a 20 to 24 hour window right now, but it's mainly 22 too. Sometimes this week, one day I woke up and I must have had a cortisol attack or something. So I had a 16-hour fasting window and an 8-hour eating window. So it varies, but I'm pretty much, I love it. It's the greatest thing I've ever run into, and I'll never quit it. And that's what I'll do the rest of my life. It's intermittent fasting.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, that is really great is with intermittent fasting is that you can, like, one day eat in a 2-hour window and the next day eat in a 4-hour window. And the next day, okay, I'm going to bump it up to 6 hours. And really the people who kind of change it up a little bit seem like they do really well, because again, it's kind of like going to the gym. If you're always doing the same exact thing at the gym, your body gets used to it. So when you kind of deviate a little bit, it can kind of make your body go, hey, okay, they're changing things up here. And it actually has a lot of benefits. So is there any foods that you have really kind of gotten rid of where you say, what we call it, the way I do it is I call it red, yellow, and green foods. Red foods means there's no chance I'm eating it. Yellow foods means, once in a while I'm going to go ahead and indulge in that. And then green is kind of my everyday of what I do.
Yeah, food's kind of an interesting subject with me. I wrote something called the 10 Commandments, and one of my commandments is thou shalt eat any food on planet Earth. There's no forbidden foods. So that's what I've done on my intermittent fasting lifestyle. The cool thing, though, is all I crave are nutritious foods now, whole, healthy, nutritious, delicious foods. So on occasion, I might have a ultra processed food, but they don't make me feel good. But I know the only way for me to irrevocably commit to permanent weight loss was to be able to eat any food I wanted whenever I wanted it. It's just I don't want those bad foods. There really aren't good foods and bad foods. It's in the life, because one book will say they're good and one book will say they're bad, and they both can't be good and bad at the same time. So I said, for my lifestyle to be sustainable, I have to be able to allow myself to eat any food I want. So that was just my approach at it, because I'm after permanent weight loss.
So I did read that one of the things, and I will read a few of these things, that you actually have a CEO pledge. And some of the things that you say is that I am unstoppable, compassionate CEO of my mind, body, and spirit. I control food. Food does not control me. I eat to live now. I no longer live to eat. Food is simply fuel for my body. So I eat what I need the most and not what I want the most. And so you kind of just have a huge list of them. So I want you to kind of go over which ones are most important. And do you say this to yourself every day?
Yes. The first thing I did, Chantel, was to identify, I examined my past, and I tried to find every bad problem I ever had and all my faulty thinking or whatever bad habits I had. I made a list of them and I prioritized them. And actually, to go a little bit before that, I took my diet brain out. I do this visualization and I climbed a mountain. I took my diet brain out of my head. I threw it over the mountain into the water and it splashed and went down to the bottom. And I said, good riddance to my diet brain, because it's easier to create a new habit than it is to change a bad habit, I think. So I just gave myself a clean slate, put my new brain in the head, and then I started working on the affirmations, like you said, but I identified 16 bad habits. On top of my list was I ate way too fast. Ate way too fast. That was my biggest habit.
That's me. That's me. I still, to this day, I've slowed down a ton, but I will tell you, this is the one thing that I would say I still struggle with. It's like, it's World War II for me to slow down and eat. So let's just stop right there and talk about exactly what you have done to slow down your eating.
Okay, that's great, because I worked really hard on that one. It was very imperfect for me. It took me probably 5 years to get it right. But I said the affirmations every day, and like that was one of your questions. I do those every day, sometimes multiple times a day at first. Now I don't really need to say them that much because I've become the person that's in those affirmations. I just do it if I'm having a little problem and I need to just, renew myself. But for fast eating, I use tiny habits. I call them itsy bitsy, teeny weeny, tiny habits. And these were the tiny habits. Just from memory. The first thing I did was to time my meals. I would start my watch when I started, I'd look at it, and then I'd look at it when I ended. And at first I learned that I was eating my 3 meals a day back then, and it took me about 20 minutes to eat 3 meals a day. That's how fast I was eating. You don't even get satiety signals until you've eaten 20 minutes. So I did that, and I started timing it. And then after I did 20 minutes, I said, well, let me see if I can make it 25 and 30. And finally, I got up to where I was spending 90 minutes a day eating my 3 meals a day. And after I timed it, the next thing I did was to take pauses. I took a pause, and all these things I did over a lot of time. I didn't just create this big list of tiny apps and do them all at one time. I stacked them on top of each other over time. The next thing I did was create pauses at the beginning, middle, and end of the meal. And then those pauses turned out to be a minute long each. And I would put my fork down. I would picture a yellow light flashing halfway through the meal to remind me to slow down. And I'd see a red light when I had about 4 or 5 bites left. I'd try to converse with people. I constantly I kept up with my time, for a long time. I just timed them, and I just wasn't going to finish my meal until I got to that time. I had a tiny habit list with the 4 or 5 things I'm working on, and I'd look at that every day in my CEO meeting that I have with myself every morning, my chief eating officer meeting, and I would check off if I looked at the yellow light or whatever it was. I was very rigid about making my tiny habits and living by them. And at first I failed 99% of the times, and then I started failing 90% of the time. And then over time, I just, got it done and just started eating slower. And where I was the first one to finish the meal, now I'm the last one to finish the meal most of the time, not all the time, but I'm so aware of how fast I'm eating now that it's really just kind of natural to eat slowly for me. I actually leave food on my plate now. I never did that. My three mothers that I had a mother, a grandmother, and a housekeeper while I was in my family business. And, you know, it was, they were from the Depression, and they would not want me to leave a bite. So all my life, I never could leave a bite on the plate. They were just trying to please me and whatever, and I loved eating food. But eventually, I learned how to leave some food on my plate. But one of my tiny tricks that I used before that was I couldn't leave a food on my plate. So I got this idea one time that somebody told me, well, take the first bite of food you have on your plate, throw it away, and then clean your plate. That's how I started trying to quit cleaning my plate. I just threw the first bite away. So at least I left something, kind of got that in my mind. And then I eventually was able to leave food. I don't always leave food on my plate, but probably half the time I do, because I eat so slowly now. I'm sometimes actually not hungry at the end of the meal, not as hungry.
So your goal is 25 minutes is kind of the goal for each meal?
Now I don't time them. You know, I've been doing this for years already. So
Yeah.
I don't look at time now. I just eat slowly. And I kind of pay attention to the people at the table and how, I know you interviewed a lot of thin people, you know, at one time when I was reading your book. And I just kind of keep my eye on everybody and see if I'm eating too fast. But I really just I savor my food now, and I enjoy it. And I put my fork down and I talk, and I've just made it, you know, it didn't noticeable what I was doing at the beginning. I was just doing these tiny habits, but people, you know, it wasn't noticeable. I knew I was doing them, but nobody else did except my immediate family that said, well, you know, what the hell is going on here? You know, they thought I was crazy when I started timing my meals. But if I go out to eat with social contacts or friends, I wasn't making it obvious to them.
I don't know about you guys, but I am stressed. And if you're feeling overwhelmed this holiday season, then I get it. With all the family get-togethers, it is just a relentless source of stress. But anyway, there is something that I've got called Stress Guardian, and it's actually made by Bioptimizers, the people who make the magnesium breakthrough, which I love, love, love. But anyway, they are literally made this new product. It has 14 adaptogenic herbs, and it just regulates your stress. I just actually took some right this second, and it's awesome. If you go to stressguardian.com/wasteaway and put in waste away for 10% off your first order, it's stressguardian.com/wasteaway. Go there now.
I love that so much. And this is an area that I still need work on. I will say one of the things that I did is I recorded a lot of these thin women, and I actually created a video course, because I think that sometimes people really learn. Like it's crazy, because I've had people say, you know, I've read your books and I lost 10 pounds, and then I did the video course, and then I lost an extra 20 pounds because they watched the ladies eat that were naturally thin, and they talked and they watched everything. And it's really magical. And I will tell you, so when you do the video course, so you'll watch when one of the girls, how she eats her soup. On her spoon, when she's eating the soup, she only fills the soup halfway. So it's halfway that she fills it and then eats it. And this is how she naturally eats. Like, she's not doing this for camera. She's not doing this for show. But that's what I'm talking about, is like when you're watching these naturally thin people, it's like light bulbs go off. And so, you know, for me, when I'm eating a bowl of soup, I don't think I've ever eaten a bowl of soup where I didn't have a full spoonful. Yeah. And so another girl was Miss Virginia, and she, when you watch her, literally she takes the food, so she would eat, and then the waitress comes over and she's like, she eats about half of it, and she goes, "Can I take your plate?" And she's like, "Are you done?" She actually pushes it away from her. And she's like, no, I'm not done. I'm just still picking at it. And so like almost like she'd start talking. And then 3 minutes later, she would eat another bite of food. And the waitress came by and she'd say, no, are you done with your plate? No joke. Waitress comes by 4 times and says, can I take your plate? And she's like, nope, I'm still picking at it. It took her about 35 minutes. She was the last one to eat, but she ate so slowly. And then she wanted to make sure that she was full. And she just kept kind of taking another bite here or there and then was like, I'm going to see if I'm full yet. But that kind of stuff, watching that is really, really powerful, and it changes how you live. And for me, just even having this discussion again is another reminder that, yes, I've made a lot of progress, but that I would say me eating too fast, because I've worked out all my other kinks. I do the intermittent fasting, I eat clean, and I do all that. If I had to put a pinpoint, I would say currently I'm probably about 5 pounds heavier than I want to be. My husband loves me at the weight that I am. He likes me like 5 pounds heavier than I like to be.
Okay.
But if I had to state, I would say the 5 pounds comes from me eating still faster than I need to eat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just curious on the lady that was Miss Virginia or whoever took so long to do her plate. Do you think she was born thin, or those were those habits just, some people are just born thin and they stay the same weight their entire life and they can wear their wedding dress and all that? Where do you think some of those people train themselves to do that? Or do you know? I don't know if that was.
Yeah. And I think that she trained herself to do that. And she was, I think, and if you ask any thin person that I've talked to, they actually fluctuate between 5 and 7 pounds. Mm. So even the thinnest eater can gain between 5 and 7 pounds, and they will bring themselves back by doing some of these tools that they have put into their tool belt. And one of the tools that she knows is that when she eats slower, she eats less food. So, but she also doesn't want to feel deprived, and she also doesn't want to, put the food away and then feel like, what, I need to eat more. So she allows herself that full 30 to 35 minutes. If she feels like she wants another bite, she takes it, and she talks so much in between. And for me, what I've had to do is I've had to create a way for me to eat half of the food, because eating so slow drives me absolutely batty. I mean, it really does.
The hardest thing I ever.
Huh?
It was the hardest thing I ever did, was to learn to eat slow.
Yeah. So I still eat slower, but then I almost have to just eat at the halfway mark. And I start, like, if I'm at home, like, I'm like, does anyone need anything? And I'll go to the bathroom, and then I'll, go get some ketchup if someone needs ketchup, or I'll refill drinks. I almost like make up stuff for myself to do, because just sitting there, I start losing my mind. So I kind of have to go do something.
It's really hard, but I'm enjoying my food so much more. I never really tasted food for 57 years until I retired from my business. I just shoveled it in. Now I actually, taste the food. It's really kind of fun, and especially with intermittent fasting. If you combine slow eating and intermittent fasting together, it's wonderful. I really suggest people to do intermittent fasting to slow their eating down, because they'll just enjoy it.
Guys, I just want to interrupt for just a second, and I want you to hear Paul Saladino talk about why liver is so important. And if you don't like liver, we have another option for you.
Your ancestors were eating liver. And the reason that this sort of wisdom has been passed down is because liver is very nutritious. It's basically nature's multivitamin. If you look at the nutrients in meat, they're great. You've got zinc, you got B6, you got B12, you got some K2. But if you look at liver, it really complements what's in muscle meat. And there are many unique nutrients found in organs, specifically liver as a powerhouse of these, that are difficult to obtain outside of liver. Like meat and organs are like peanut butter and jelly. They just go together. They're supposed to be eaten together. The easiest way to eat liver is just to do it raw. If you don't want to eat liver raw, you can cook it. But the reason that I like to do it raw is because there are unique nutrients in liver that are probably somewhat degraded when you cook the liver.
This really is like the most nutrient-rich supplements that you can find, and they are amazing. I have tried them. I absolutely love them. So just go to heartandsoil.co, use the coupon code Chantel Ray, and save you some money there. I think you just said something so powerful, because one of the things that is really, really bad with intermittent fasting is that you get to the point where you're so hungry. So in my book, I talk about the hunger scale, and I put that scale between 0 and 5. And I always say, it's nice to be able to eat when you're at a level 1, because if you're at a 0 or like a -1, you get yourself so ravenous, and then it's very, very difficult to eat slow. And so one of the things that I also recommend is to, right before you're about to start your eating window, eat a little something, meaning like whether it's a little bit of an avocado or like a boiled egg, like 15 minutes before you're actually going to sit down to eat. And that really does help you to slow down, because once you get to that point where you're so ravenous, that's another problem that people have. And then now they've gotten themselves so hungry. Now they've overeaten because they've eaten so fast. So what you just said is so powerful. It's the combination of intermittent fasting and slow eating that is the real key to weight loss. I really agree with that. I want you to talk about allowing yourself to eat what you're craving, and how when you allowed yourself to do that, you're still eating nutritious food. Like, you're not eating Twinkies and, just a bunch of junk. You're eating what your body's calling for, but your body's now calling for healthier options. Talk about that.
Okay, 'cause I'm pretty lucky. My wife, we've been married 50 years this year, and my 3 grown children live in town also. And my son's like an unbelievable cook, so he cooks a lot for us, real high quality food. And my wife's a good cook, and my daughters are good cooks. So I'm just kind of blessed. I have all this really great food brought to me. We don't really eat out that much. We do some, but we just enjoy eating together at home when we can. Maybe we'll do that a couple of times a week with everybody. And me and my wife, Debbie, makes great food. And I'm not hungry all day. I'm really not. I do a 22-2, and I do a 1 to 100 scale, and I'm at 50. I'm not hungry, and I'm not satisfied. I'm just kind of like cruising along, doing good. Now, sometimes I get hungry. It'd be, crazy to say you don't ever get hungry, but most of the time, I really just kind of cruise all day. If I eat at 6 o'clock at night, around 5, I just start thinking it's dinner time. Maybe I'm getting kind of hungry, but if I'm busy doing something, I don't even think about it. I've just been real fortunate and been metabolically blessed with what I've been doing, and I'm just not hungry.
I love that. So, and really what that is that means that your body has really become fat adapted. Because once you become fat adapted, that's when you stop getting so ravenous. And fat adaptation is basically a long-term metabolic adjustment to ketosis, where your body is in a state of where it's going to burn fat for fuel instead of carbs. You've trained it now that when it gets hungry, it automatically can go burn fat for fuel. And that is one of the huge benefits of doing intermittent fasting. And that fat adaptation is what actually results in decreased cravings, increased energy levels, and improved sleep. So being fat adapted is really where you want to be. And it doesn't mean that your body will avoid using glucose when it's available. It will, but if it doesn't have any glucose or anything, it will simply go to the fat that you have to be able to eat. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the other pledges. So one of them is my mindset is how slow can I eat, not how fast. So that's one. But talk about some of the other mindsets and things that you have in there that you're saying to yourself.
Sure. My mindset is how soon can I stop? I eat this. You want to stay on each one?
Yeah.
Okay. So how soon can I stop? It's kind of like how little can I eat? How soon can I stop? All the instincts I had when I was heavy, and all the things I did wrong, I just told my mind to do the opposite. And then hopefully I end up somewhere in between right there. But I said, how slow can I eat? How soon can I stop? And how little can I eat? Those were the three mindset things that I used. And I don't really feel like I need to say that anymore because it's just kind of happened naturally. I don't overeat as much as I used to. And I was as bad. I was a fast eater, but I always way overate because my three mothers I discussed earlier wanted me to be full and happy. And I carried that around my entire life. And I just get kind of full a lot sooner. I eat a lot. I mean, I'm a volume eater, but when I've had enough, and I know I'll feel better if I just stop. I don't think anybody ever wakes up the next morning after they've overeaten and said, "I wish I'd eaten 2 more bites." I don't think that happens. So, do you want to hear some more of these, or do you want to?
Yes, I do. I love the one where you said, "I eat to satisfy hunger only," and I want you to talk about how you no longer eat for comfort, not for entitlement, and all of that list.
Let me tell you, I talked about slow eating and intermittent fasting. That's the other great thing that happened. I used to eat for every reason besides hunger. It didn't matter what there is: comfort, entitlement, reward, celebration, out of boredom because I'm excited, future hunger, all that stuff. But the coolest thing about fasting and intermittent fasting is once you have an eating window and a fasting window. In the fasting window, you just eat when you're hungry. You don't eat for any of those comfort reasons, this, that, and the other. That's just kind of how you live. So I had, like I told you, I had 16 bad problems. If I'd have done intermittent fasting, I would have gotten rid of those 8 because you just eat when you're hungry. That's the idea. Now, anybody can eat anytime, but if they're serious about doing intermittent fasting, most people say they don't want to mess with their, fasting window. And so all those reasons kind of go out the way. And when I'm eating during my 2 hours, I'm hungry and there's no other reason I'm eating. And then I stop, and then I don't do those comfort things the next day.
I want to read this out loud, and because it says, "I no longer eat for comfort. I no longer eat for entitlement. I no longer eat for reward. I no longer eat for celebration. I no longer eat out of boredom. I no longer eat because I'm excited. I no longer eat just because I have a craving or want something. And I no longer eat just to clean the food off my plate." I think that one of the ones that people don't talk about enough is this idea of I no longer eat for entitlement and I no longer eat for reward. Explain those two to us.
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that question. That's cool for me because I gained 40 pounds over 40 years, a pound a year, 3,500 calories. And I think I told you, I don't know if it was before or during this thing. I'm 72 years old, but I exercise like a maniac. I played basketball twice a day when I was younger. I played tennis all my life. I played pickleball. I walked 6 miles a day, and I was relying on that to lose weight, which it never did. I gained 40 pounds doing that. And what I learned, I had a nerve problem in my back, and I was in bed for 3 weeks when I was trying to lose weight. And I lost 11 pounds in 3 weeks by laying in bed all day. I gained 2 of those back, but I ended up net losing 9 pounds by doing no exercising when I was spending 2 hours a day exercising. And I said, I was just doing this for entitlement and reward, and so I was overeating. That was one of the biggest ahas in my life because I thought you're supposed to exercise like a maniac and all this weight's going to fall off. And that's what I did for most of my adult life. So that was awesome when I figured that out.
I will tell you one area, and I'd love for you to give an example if you can think of one. I hate to fly. I don't know why I do, but I just don't enjoy it. And my husband loves it. Like, he loves to fly. He loves to travel. And the nice thing is he knows I hate to fly. So he almost always, we either fly private or we fly first class. And so that's good. But in first class, depending on where you're going, you always get food. And so even if I'm not hungry, one of the things that I would say that I'll justify is sometimes I'll eat during that time because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this is such a miserable thing. I'm going to be on this flight for 4 hours. I hate flying so much. At least I can eat this nasty plane. I mean, the food's not good, you know? But it's like, okay, well, at least I have something to do to keep me occupied. And so that is kind of, in my mind, an entitlement or almost eating for reward, like, good job for flying on this plane. I'm going to do that. And so that's one of the things that I have to, what I've done now to get rid of that is I just tell myself I'm fasting during that time. So if it's, a lot of times we'll fly in the morning and so I'm not hungry and I don't eat breakfast anyway. So I'll kind of do that. But I know that is an area where I could, really kind of, the devil will get to me and lie to me and say, well, you're on this terrible flight and all of that. Can you think of any other examples like that?
Well, I'll just tell you what I do. And by the way, I hate to fly too. I had to do it a lot during my career and hated being on airplanes. But what I do is I just take something to be real busy on. I'll read a book. I'll play games. If I'm with my wife, we'll unscramble words or do things. And when I'm in my fasting window, I just hadn't really had a problem with that. Every once in a while, every time I'm hungry, I eat. I'm just not hungry. If I'm on the flight and I feel the least bit hungry, I'll just go ahead and eat. But I kind of stick to the reasons why I eat and why I don't eat. But I hadn't had that problem, but sometimes Debbie will get, some crackers or cookies or whatever, and I'm not that interested. I just look back at my book and see whatever I was working on. I do a lot of journaling too, to help me with this stuff.
One of the things that I absolutely love that you wrote is you said, in fact, the hungrier I am, the slower I eat. And the slower I eat, the more I enjoy my food. I need to memorize that one for sure, because the one time that I really can talk myself into eating fast is the justification. Let's say maybe I just waited, 24 hours to eat. Like, I just, I didn't get a chance to eat. I went longer, that I got busy and just, I hadn't eaten all day. I just forgot. And then by that time, I'm like, oh my gosh. So in my mind, I justify it and go, well, I haven't eaten anything all day. I'm ravenous. Of course, I'm going to eat fast. And what you wrote is, in fact, the hungrier I am, the slower I eat. And the slower I eat, the more I enjoy my food. That is powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. It was for me because, like I said, I ate fast and I overate. And I did the opposite. This list of the Compassionate Chief Eating Officer Pledge is the opposite. Everything in there is the opposite of how I was my entire life. So when I identified all my problems, I turned them into my affirmations. And I did them the polar opposite of how I am. So when I did those things the first few times, I didn't pay a bit of attention to them. I'm just sitting there like reading these things, how I'm going to be. And if you, every once in a while, if you do it for a month or 2 months, one time you do eat slower when you're hungry. You know what I'm saying? It just kind of builds and builds and builds. But I had to tell myself I'm going to be the opposite of how I am. And if you live 17, 18 years doing that, you can become that person. Really, I started changing after 2 or 3 years. It took me that long to get those things in my brain.
Did you guys know that your thyroid's main food is iodine? And guess what? Mercury and other toxins gobble up your selenium, and your thyroid glands need selenium to convert iodine to thyroxine. So if you have mercury fillings and with all the toxins and mold, your selenium just gets gobbled up. So here's the bottom line. I take something called Peak Thyroid. It's got iodine, it's got copper, and it's got selenium. Everything you need to get your thyroid back to functioning without medicine. So go to chantelrayway.com/upgraded formulas. Use the coupon code ChantelRay to get a huge discount. I want you to kind of describe in as much detail kind of the benefits of mindful eating. And, by paying attention to, how you're feeling at that time, or, kind of maybe some of these tips, like kind of what I was saying before about the girl only puts half of the soup on the spoon, or, chopping your food up in really small, bites, or whatever that you have done to be able to practice mindfulness, whether it's a few deep breaths or employing all your senses, or, tuning in to how you're feeling at that time. Can you describe any of that in as much detail as possible?
Yeah. Honestly, I have to tell you that the way I started eating slowly was to do mindless eating rather than mindful eating. And what I mean by that is my first meal of the day, I'd get a big bowl of raw vegetables. And then I would go to my computer. I'd put hummus or salsa or whatever I did with them, could be leftover vegetables from the night before. And I set my watch, and I had this big thing of vegetables, and I said, 11:15 at 12 o'clock, I'm going to be through with this. So I just sat there and ate a bite or two. I was really trying to figure out what my satiety signals were like and when they went into effect. And I've become an expert on that for my own unique body. I couldn't tell anybody else how to do that. But I would take a bite when I go and do whatever I was doing on my emails or whatever, and then I'd take another bite. Sometimes I'd take 3 bites because I was a little hungrier and I need a little bit more. But if I did that, I'd wait an extra 2 minutes. It was really, really, really hard to do, almost impossible to do. But that's how, one of the main ways I slowed my eating down. It wasn't so much at supper. It was having my first meal of the day. I don't call it breakfast, whenever I had it. And I would actually be busy doing something rather than being mindful, because if you try to eat that long and you're mindful, you'll go absolutely nuts. Right? Nobody can do that.
Yeah.
So that was how I dealt with that. Like I did the opposite things of what, people might do.
Yeah. And I think, just simple things like, putting your utensils down after a few bites of food is really, really
That's hard.
Yeah. And also chewing, like I don't even think people understand, like for me, part of a lot of my issues that I have had in my gut is because I don't chew well and I don't have good digestion. And so taking the time to chew your food more mindfully and observing how many chews that you have and avoid feeling rushed is so important, because the first step of digestion, people don't realize, happens in your mouth. People think, oh, digestion's happening once it gets to the stomach. It's not. There is a complete process, and the number one most important place starts with that saliva and the amount of times that you're chewing it in your mouth. And so it's just such a great reminder. Well, you've got a new book that's coming out. I want you to give us a couple of your best tips that we haven't talked about yet that can get people excited about getting the book.
Okay, I have a section called the 10 Commandments, and what I did, Chantel, is I've been keeping up with diets and dieting my entire life, and I have shelves of books and all kinds of folders and everything, and I tried to find about 30 concepts that I thought were important, and I eventually got down to 20 and then down to 10, which I call the 10 Commandments. And the number one commandment, I think, is the most important thing it was to me, and I think it might be to a lot of people, is thou shalt make an irrevocable commitment to permanent weight loss. An irrevocable commitment. I made commitments, and I think I made a commitment every week for 50 years after I ate too much on the weekend that I'm going on a diet this week. Well, when I weighed my highest weight ever at 234.6, and I couldn't believe it, I fell off the back of my scale. I think while I was falling, I said, I don't care what I have to do and how long it takes to do it, but I'm going to lose weight permanently and keep it off. And I knew when I did that, it kind of took pressure off me, because like a big, you have something on your shoulder and it's a big barrier to your life or whatever. It kind of lightened me. And I said, wow, I just finally made that decision. I don't have to make that decision again. So it was sort of a relief. And I was so committed. There was no way I was going to see that scale go over 235, 234.6 was going to be that. And then I have the other thing is to have I weigh every day. And I think that's really important to do. I know people don't do it, but I relate it to like a football coach. It's halftime and he didn't look at the scoreboard. And I wanted to become an expert on myself. So I have a 4-pound line in the sand weight. And when my weight goes down a pound, the line in the sand goes down a pound. And it keeps going like that. My weight goes down. It might go up, but my last line in the sand never goes up. It never goes up. I might go over it, but it's never going up. So I have to get my way back down so they'll move down proportionally. But, sometimes you get to 4 pounds and you go over the 4 pounds because you ate a big meal for some reason and you're up to 6 pounds. But that last line in the sand weight never went up for me. If it takes me 10 days or 2 weeks, I'm not raising my line in the sand weight for any reason whatsoever. So I would say the irrevocable commitment and having a line in the sand weight, because the best way to lose weight is not to gain weight in the first place, and additional weight. So that would be my 2. I have a lot of stuff. I have something called A Trillion Tiny Tricks, but just all the ideas I've had my entire life, or whatever I saw in a diet book or whatever, I've clipped them my entire life. Somebody said, don't put it in your book. You need to just do your next book on doing that. But so those would be the 2, I would say. Irrevocable.
Love it. I love it. And I just want to tell people, one of the things that I've even started doing as a little side tip is that you actually should chew, even if you have a smoothie. Like I get a lot of smoothies sometimes just to have a lot of different fruits and vegetables in there. And they say that you should actually chew your smoothie to help support healthy digestion and absorption. And actually chewing activates saliva. So when you take a sip, it will activate your saliva, and that contains amylase. It's an enzyme that breaks down carbohydrates in the fruits and vegetables in your smoothie. And chewing, like I said, is the first phase of digestion in your mouth and breaking down into smaller pieces. So even when you're doing a smoothie, we've talked about eating slow. Even having that smoothie, because, I know people who they'll take a smoothie. That's me too. It would be like, 5 sips later and it's gone. But you can even do that with like a smoothie. And so this has been amazing. Tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Okay. I really have fun. Like I say, I'm not doing this to make a living. I'm fine that way. So I'm just doing it for fun, and it's a passion of mine. But I have a Facebook group that is
And we'll put that in the show notes.
Okay.
We'll put the link in the show notes so that they have that.
Okay. And then I'm at Twitter, and then anybody can call me or contact me any way they can. I don't have a website. When I get my book done, I'm planning on having a website also. But I'm just an old retired man when I don't have a staff anymore, and I just have to do everything myself, and everybody has to help me with technology and this, that, and the other. But I'll just learn as I go. But that would be the best way to have people tell me.
Well, Martin, this has been my pleasure. Thank you so much for all that you're doing and really helping people to get rid of the vicious cycle of dieting and just really losing weight permanently. You've been a blessing to me today, and I know everyone listening, this has been a blessing to them. So you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.